Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we are so excited for today's guest. In my coaching tree, I have a connection to Wayland High School with one of my former coaches, so it was really cool to be able to have the head coach on. And I know Wayland runs an extremely great program for, the last 14, 15 years that I can remember when I got into the coaching game and even beyond that. But really excited to have a great coach on here, someone who's won in a lot of different years and really runs a very good program from top to bottom. So super excited to have him on. Just a few accolades. Going in his 21st year. This year's his 21st year as the head football coach at Wayland High School. Was 6 years an assistant previous to that, an alumni of the school, played football, and also is a 21-year wrestling coach. So being able to coach two varsity sports back to back is not easy to do time-wise and commitment-wise. It's a lot. So, I give this coach a lot of credit for 20 plus years of doing that. That is not easy. It is a commitment, and it's something you do when you truly love it. Was Massachusetts State Coach of the Year in 2006, his first year as head football coach, and won the Super Bowl 13-0. Was also, Globe Coach of the Year, Herald Globe Coach of the Year, Metro West Coach of the Year. So someone who really is a very good football coach and it is well known in the state of Massachusetts. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope I don't mess this last name up, Scott Paresghian.
Paresghian, yeah.
Paresghian, okay.
That's why they call me Coach P. That's why they call me Coach P at Wayland.
We've talked about it. We've talked about this on the phone. We talked about this before, and I still messed up. So it's okay. That's okay. But again, it's an honor to have you on here, and I think your coaching resume is tremendous.
It's an honor to be part of the show.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a really good time. So, one thing that I really want to talk to you about is when we spoke on the phone, obviously your passion runs. I mean, I'm an Arlington Catholic guy. I went to school there. I coached there. I have an undying loyalty there. And the same thing seems for you at Wayland High School. You even said to me when we spoke on the phone for a little bit that when you were a sophomore in high school, you told everybody there that you would be back and you would be coaching and you would be the head coach someday. And here we are having this conversation right now, many years later, and you're in that position. So just talk about your passion for Wayland High School a little bit, the town of Wayland, and obviously you knew what you wanted to be at a very young age. So just giving you that opportunity to chit chat about it a little bit.
Yeah, it all started, like you said, my sophomore year, actually writing a paper for an English class and talking about what you want to do. And I just kind of put it out there on paper that, I want to come back to Wayland. I want to be a coach here and be part of this community for the rest of my life. And that English teacher just kind of shared it with the principal, the athletic director. And so it was always known to everybody that that was kind of my goal. And I'll remember the time that it was my senior year and we were in the wrestling room and one of our stars just was having a bad day and, threw the trash can and ran out of the room. And the wrestling coach, who was my biggest mentor, Coach Moyer, and athletic director at the time, he sent me after him. And so I chased him down the hallway and we got caught up in the corner and I talked to him for 5 or 10 minutes. And then Coach Moyer arrived on the scene, the two of us, and he goes in to talk to the kid. And this kid looks at Coach Moyer after he was done speaking to him and said, "That's the exact same thing that Scott just said to me for 10 years. And I just remember the coach putting his hand on my shoulder and said, "That's why he's going to be the next greatest coach here at Wayland." And that was like my senior year. And that was just like, all right, let's go. Like I just, it just all clicked right there my senior year. I've been talking about this and the fact that I said kind of the same exact things that my mentor said to this young wrestler that was having a tough day, kind of solidified that, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And everybody knew. And when I graduated from Plymouth State, I was back home.
Yeah, and obviously that's like the teacher side of you too. I'm a teacher as well. So just being able to talk to kids, I mean, it's a gift and not a lot of people can do it. And especially at a young age to be able to talk to your peer, and calm them down and say the same things that a head coach said. I mean, yeah, the writing was on the wall for you for sure. And one, obviously you went back, you mentioned from Plymouth State, you went back there and began coaching and you coached, football. You were an assistant coach there for 6 years before, the 2006 season. You kind of put your name in the hat because the head coaching position had opened up. And I know previously when we spoke on the phone, it seemed to be kind of a revolving door over the last few years before that of head coaches coming into the program. And not saying the product wasn't great, because a couple of years before that, I researched, you guys were 9-2. Your quarterback and receiver were like wrecking, breaking everything. So, you definitely had some talent. But what in '06 made you finally say, I'm ready for this job. I've been in this program as a player and as a coach, and I think I can lead it to that next level?
So I actually took over in '01.
Oh, I apologize. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I took over in that 2001 year. So
Okay.
but you're exactly right. I was part of the program. I started out as a freshman football coach, as I think a lot of us do. Especially young guys start out as freshman football and then moved up through there, and JV and varsity assistant. And throughout those years, just like you said, it was a revolving door. I saw, up to 5 coaches come in and out. One coach didn't even start the season, just left right before the season started. So it was really weird kind of time. And I love Wayland. Obviously, I've said that, and I think that will come out through this interview. But it was me talking to the principal at the middle school, who again was a mentor to me, and he said, "Why don't you do this?" And I kind of like, well, I always thought I was waiting to be the next head wrestling coach at the school, and I didn't think that I could do both jobs well, being a head coach and being them so close together. And it just, after I thought about it for a little while, I'm like, why not? I'm not going anywhere. This is home. This is what the team needs. It needs stability. It needs somebody that's in charge, that has a vision, and that does not plan to leave, and is ready to lay down his roots and do anything he can for the program. And when I looked at that, I said, that's me. I might still have a little ways to go. I don't think I was ready X and O's way. I wasn't, but I think a leadership point, I was ready to take over. At the time, I was the head girls lacrosse coach. So I had been, that was my first kind of little gig as a head coach. That job was open. I was assistant boys coach. And at that time, I started to think, like, I want to try to be a head coach, and this job opened up, and it wasn't a big pool of people. So the school talked to me, said, "Hey, would you think about doing this?" And I said, "Sure." I was teaching in the school, had a great reputation with all the kids. And so my first job was the head girls lacrosse coach in
I didn't
Wayland.
know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So I did that for about 3 years. And then it was, the job opened up, and once football, I got the job, I stepped down. I had some great coaches under me with girls lacrosse, and they took over and they did a great job there. But, one of my big mentors growing up was Bruce Rich at Chelmsford. And I was amazed that this guy was the head football coach, head wrestling coach, and head softball coach. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do 3 varsity sports? And, when I got hired as the football coach, I remember Bruce Rich was one of the first guys I called and said, because he had a great football program, great wrestling. I mean, he did everything right. I was like, what do I do? And, and we started scrimmaging each other. He was like, hey, if you want to be the best, come. He had his try scrimmage, and we joined. And so it kind of all just fell into place there. And here I am 21 years later, still here as the head coach.
That's wild to me. And, what's really cool is like, obviously, like, we all have our mentors. We all have those people that have influenced us or make us, who we are in the sense of that world. And like you said, 3 sports is nuts, because I mean, preparing for football, just being a football coach, like in the off season, I felt like it was a full-time job in itself. So it's like, when you go into winter and spring, like, when are you prepping for that stuff? So that's a lot of work. And him to be successful, hat off to him. So I mentioned that from '01 to '05, you had some really good teams and some pretty good talent. Obviously, you guys play in a tough league, and at that time, Division 1A. I mean, you're playing some top-notch schools, period, in the entire state. But in '06, I did a little bit of research on this. I kind of dug a little further deeper. In '06, you guys won the Super Bowl. You went 13-0, and you played some really tough teams. I mean, obviously in league, but obviously, back then the playoff system was, if you won your league, you played a winner of another league. What I found interesting was that, and if I'm wrong here, please tell me, because I was already wrong once. 1,000 students within the school that year. So if you're dividing that by 4, that's like 250 kids per class. Then you figure, us? Yeah. Am I right about
we're
that?
800. We're 800.
Well, at that time, you might have been like 1,000 from what I researched. There was like a newspaper article. So doing the math though, even if it was between 800 to 1,000, I mean, you're talking maybe 100 to 120 25 boys per class. I mean, that's not a lot. So to be able to kind of take on the iron of some of the teams that you played and some of the programs you played and to go 13-0 was really, really impressive. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that season. Obviously your first Super Bowl victory as a head coach, and the feeling you had when it all went down.
Yeah, that's a special season right there. I mean, the stars aligned. You got to have it all. You got to stay healthy. You got to have the horses. All those things. Very tough league. I mean, Acton Boxborough was just coming off, their 56 game win streak.
Right.
Lincoln Sudbury is always tough. So just our league alone, and then in the playoffs we got to go play Central Catholic. I mean, are you kidding me?
Right.
But again, we stayed healthy through the whole time. Again, leading up to those 5 years leading up to that, I had finally established, a weight training program. The philosophy had changed in the program where, there was, when I first took over, we were calling ourselves a dirty 30 because we had 30 kids on the varsity team, and really it was 28. I brought up 2 freshmen just so we had 30 kids.
Yeah, that was the article I read. You guys were called the Dirty 30. I thought it was phenomenal.
Yes. We go from that to all of a sudden just getting the numbers and the school and the kids and the youth program. I'm just coming from youth football right now. I'm still involved on the board and go down every Sunday and make sure my players go down there. So all that kind of stuff, really putting in the time. All the way from the youth level, all the way up to the high school level, especially in a small town like Wayland. I think it really helps out. And we finally were able to get, I think that was like one of our biggest rosters with 66 kids on it. And it just kind of helped out. I mean, and everybody played a role from the sophomores getting us ready. I mean, you can't, the look teams, how do they prepare you week in and week out? You forget about that. That those young kids have to be the other team that week. And they were preparing, they were studying, they were doing their job. Like, okay, we got to run wing T this week. And, when you don't run wing T and all of a sudden you got to get some sophomores and juniors to run wing T, that's hard. But they took pride in their job for that week, to get the varsity guys ready. And again, it just all kind of worked out to be that magical season.
Yeah, it was cool to really read about. It was an awesome article. It was long and I was enjoying it. So it was really cool to be able to highlight that for you. And you mentioned something really important. I think it's totally underestimated is the fact that, yeah, those younger kids, they're learning the opposing team's offense and the opposing team's defense. And you feel bad for those kids in a way because they kind of are like a punching bag in a sense going against the top-notch kids, but they're preparing those guys for the day of recognizing formations and understanding when they motion, this is what happens. And if it's a double tight offense, are they pulling their guards and tackles? So those kids got to learn that offense to give those varsity guys the best look as possible on both sides of the football. So in talking about that, obviously part of that is preparing the kids to do that, right? Preparing your ones to be ready for game day and preparing those younger kids to give the best scout team look throughout the week as possible. Coaching staff, how do you go about assessing, hiring coaches? Is there a certain philosophy you have? Are you more of an alumni guy? Are you more of an experienced guy? Is it a mix of both? I mean, talk about how you go about developing a staff, because I'm sure over 21 years, you've had some guys that have moved on to different positions or have taken head coaching positions elsewhere. So you have to kind of reload in that sense. So how do you go about assessing coaches that are best for the program?
First of all, I say that I love alumni. I mean, that'd be my first choice if you could,
100%.
It does make such a difference. I think that they were in the program, that they wore the same uniforms as these kids. They know the town, they know the kids. So that definitely helps out, but you can't always do that. I am lucky to have 5 guys on my staff right now that all played for me or played along with me at Wayland. So that definitely helps out. But then you got some great guys too that haven't been there. I have one father that both sons were captain for me and he's coaching, but we call him now. He's totally like a Wayland guy too. So it is, I also think it's very important to try to get your coaches in the school system, which is very tough to do. I'm lucky right now that the freshman coach and I are both Wayland guys. We played high school football together. He was a freshman when I was a senior. His dad was our wrestling coach. There's all kinds of ties. We're like brothers, but he's the freshman football coach. He teaches history in the building. I'm the health and wellness director for the district. So we're both in the building, and that really helps out having your freshman head coach in the building, because you do a lot of recruiting there of kids that maybe have never played before, but want to. And sometimes all it is about asking that kid, making them feel wanted to come out. And yeah, you can do this, and just give them that pep talk. I've had we've done it so many times. And then we hear from parents, thank you. This is what they needed. They needed that push. And it can't come from the parents, but it means so much when a teacher or coach grabs you in the hallway and says, have you thought about football? And I'm lucky as a wellness teacher, so I could see him in the athletic environment too. And I'm like, well, that kid can move all right. You're not playing anything in the fall. Did you ever think about playing football? And vice versa,
Wrestling,
with wrestling too, and most of our wrestling team is made up of football guys.
I was going to ask you that later on. So yeah, we might as well. So you do that. You do a lot of cross recruiting. Like, hey, this kid's a pretty agile 155-pound kid that could probably play corner for us. I'm going to move him for the wrestling team or get him to do wrestling, but also to play football. Do you do that a lot?
Absolutely. I mean, the coach I talked, Sean Chase, who's my freshman coach, he's the head wrestling coach. So we just flip roles come winter. So we both do heavy recruiting off the football team to get on the wrestling mat.
Smart.
Yeah, it definitely helps out. Obviously, you love your receivers and quarterbacks maybe playing basketball or doing some speed work, and that's great. Our philosophy is just do something. But if you're not doing anything, you're going to come with us and you're going to wrestle, So, we are a small school. I was a 3-sport athlete at Wayland, so I believe I can't stand all this specializing in one sport. I'm definitely not a proponent of that. You're in high school, play as many sports as you can. Have fun.
And I love that you said that because I believe in the same philosophy. There's so much specializing in sports, and I think there is a spot for that. I just think sometimes it happens too young, and they don't allow athletes to maybe develop their bodies and develop their muscles because every sport you're using different muscles and using them different ways. So being able to develop as an athlete, play sports, be a leader, facing tough situations maybe in one sport that can help you with another later on as being a leader for that program. So I totally agree with you on so many different levels when it comes to playing multiple sports. And one thing that I love that you said when we just spoke on the phone briefly the other day was letting your coaches coach. When I was a head coach, I believe the same thing. I mean, these guys are there working hard, just as hard, watching film, breaking things down, putting in the grind work. So being able to, as an assistant coach, to feel that your head coach trusts you is really important, obviously, for your motivation, but obviously you wanted to go out there and even work harder for your coach. How do you assess in an off season, what are your expectations for your coaches? I mean, you mentioned some of them do coach wrestling with you or might coach other sports within the school system. But when it comes to football, is there a certain expectation you have for them as far as clinics and education goes and participating in workouts and things like that?
So I guess the one thing I would say to them is that the ones that, again, I don't have many in the system. I have 3 or 4 at one time sometimes. So my one thing is that they cannot just see the kids last day on Thanksgiving and then see them the first day of football. Please come into the winter workouts, the summer workouts, the spring, wherever. Go to other games, support the kids in basketball, hockey, lacrosse, whatever it is, but show up at a game because that means a lot to the kids when they see their other coach there watching them. So I trust all my coaches. I mean, I think we all want to get better at our craft. So I know that they're, and you don't have to it's not like, all right, let's go to this clinic anymore because there's so much online.
Right.
I mean, it's totally really changed the whole game, the internet and stuff that's involved and Huddle and everything that you can watch film. You're not passing around a DVD anymore or making copies, going to the media, say, hey, can you make me 5 copies of this game? When I first started out, that's how it was. But, I know that the coaches are watching Huddle even off season and trying, I can see that. I can see that they've logged on. So that's great. But just being around, I think that's the most important thing. Being around the program, being around the kids.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Just to be a presence. I mean, I used to make it a point to go to basketball games, go to hockey games, go to baseball, lacrosse, just to see them playing in a different sport, watching how they are on the field, watching them on the sideline a little bit. I mean, they enjoy that. They love seeing their coaches from another sport. I know seeing, some of my football players that were hockey players and seeing their hockey coaches at a game, meant a lot for them. It got them maybe just a little bit more juiced up that their coach was there paying attention. And then obviously in the off season, being able to work with them.
And as a parent too, I'm lucky that I just had my sons graduate the last 2 years. I had 2 sons back to back. So as a parent too, I love seeing the coaches come and hearing from the parents, because I was a parent myself. It's like, oh, great, Coach so-and-so was at the game yesterday, even though I wasn't there because my son was maybe playing somewhere else. But hearing that the parents even talk about it, I think means a lot too.
Yeah, it's all about building a culture around your program at the end of the day. And, kids want to, as an educator, like kids want to feel supported and they want to feel that they're loved. And I think that just simple thing like that of taking a time out during the week to go catch a game, it's a huge impact that maybe the coach doesn't even realize they're having even when they do it. They're doing it just to do it. So, and what I love about your coaching staff, and I got to know a couple of them. I know Will Cobb was someone who coached for me my years at Arlington Catholic, both as an assistant and as a head coach. But when I took over the job at Arlington Catholic, one of the things that I really wanted to kind of spice up and change was the weight room participation. And I reached out, Will had given me a couple of your assistant coaches' names, and they started an app called Platform, and it changed our weight room. It really did. I mean, there were more kids participating in there than ever. We don't have a huge weight room, so they have kids. Some kids were working out in the gym, doing their conditioning, while other kids are in the weight room, being able to switch. It was all because of that. It was all because of Platform. So how lucky and beneficial are you that you have coaches on staff that have literally created a business, and obviously it's worked in your program, and you guys have been very successful. But how great is it to have coaches that really just like run that weight room? Everything, like you mentioned, for coaches is easy to track, but for athletes, it's even easier to track to who's doing the workouts, to how much their gains are, and so on and so forth. I mean, talk about having that in your program.
Yeah, I think Platform is equivalent to having Huddle. I think it's a must-have. I mean, it's really changed our program so much over the years. I think when I first started, I just didn't know a lot. I mean, obviously knew what I was doing, kind of lifting and stuff, but didn't know if I was doing everything right. So I grabbed onto that BFS program, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, and kind of were making the kids do that. And then one of my coaches who returned, who was a superstar for me, Sam Breslin, went on to play at Colgate University 4 years. He came back and he was a PE teacher in the building under me, and it was great to have him there. And he created this kind of program for all of our athletes, not just football players. It's for all the athletes, and he was running it in the PE program. And we saw it really start to take off with both girls and boys athletic teams. And he said, we were talking one day, he's like, I might have something here. And we're like, I think you do too. And he left the teaching world to pursue this, Platform. He brought in his college roommate who was coaching at Sacred Heart. And they kind of got together and made this whole program. And now I tell you what, with the pandemic, their company just took off, and they're doing great things. But yeah, to have these guys, the three kind of founders on my staff is, just such a value to the program. And again, it's just getting all the kids ready to go and buy into the program. They know these coaches do it. And my coaches they do the program with them. Yeah, I got three coaches that come in and do the exact same program as the kids and
Yeah.
show gains and stuff like that. So that's fun too. Yeah.
And I said this to my staff, and I mean this. I'm like, when you're talking about like nutrition and health and fitness, these kids aren't going to listen to us in a weight room when half of us are in terrible shape. We look awful, right? Like we want something that like they can look at and say, okay, this is what they're going to do. This is how they're going to do it. Everything's on the phone. I mean, kids are on their phone so much, and everything's an application now. So the access is really easy, and the information, especially like with workouts, the videos are there. So even if you don't understand what the exercise is or how to do it, you can click a 30, 45-second tutorial that shows you exactly how to do it from beginning to end. And I think that that's also a safety thing that, kids just aren't throwing on a ton of weight and being like, oh, look how much I can squat and look how much I can lift. They're doing it the right way, and it's not making them try to be these guys in the weight room that are putting on tons of plates on both sides. It's about form, technique, and getting your body bigger, stronger, faster in a safe way. So yeah, kudos to you guys. I mean, you're very lucky to have that. And I wanted to be able to kind of give you that opportunity to talk about that. And obviously for your assistants, to be able to kind of have that put out there, but it's a must. I had it, I experienced it. And I think it's a great application for all sports, really. Um, and so what I like to do in this segment here is talk a little bit more about the X's and O's stuff. You know, being a coach, this to me, this is like one of the biggest educations, no matter which sport or which coach I have on here from what sport. It's just really cool to really learn philosophical things and X's and O's, things that, you know, you kind of buy into as a coach and so on and so forth. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, and I ask every coach this, no matter what sport, obviously you have your league and your league's difficult in itself. How do you go about assessing non-league opponents when you know you might have an open spot or two on your schedule? Are you looking for teams that are offensively and defensively maybe similar to teams in your league? Are you looking to play maybe a little bit tougher to get yourself ready for the league? Like, do you assess that year to year when you have to make those decisions?
Definitely do, but I got to tell you, it's all changed this year with this whole new power ranking system. I mean, and
Yeah.
trying to figure it out from week to week, and seeing like, okay, it's not going to help you to go play some team that hasn't won many games.
Right.
You're almost better off playing a powerhouse team and losing. At least it looks like. I'm still trying to figure out all the math and everything, and every week it's changing. But it's going to change how coaches in Massachusetts go out and schedule non-league games over the next couple of years. I mean, we really didn't know what was going to happen this year, so everybody's schedule was already set. But going forward, I think you're really going to, for me, it's going to be try to stay in division as much as possible. That will be my number one goal, so being in Division 4, where before it was like, hey, you could still schedule a bad Division 1 team and win, and you get those extra points. That's not the case anymore. So
Right.
that was kind of the philosophy back then, is like, hey, if you can go out and get the higher division teams, a 1, 2, or 3 for us being in Division 4, that we knew was going to be, competitive for us and have a good chance of winning to get those extra couple points. That was beneficial. That's not the case anymore. So really evaluate. I think the off season is going to be a big evaluation of who you schedule. Off the top of my head, I think it's going to be scheduling good programs and in division. I think I think that's how I'm going to have to do it from now on. But I think we're all learning right now with this new power rankings and just waiting for it to come out, and when is it going to be set? Because even the MIA and Boston Globe aren't exactly the same, which is kind of, crazy to think.
And I'm sure all the like networks that like, or like the, people that report this stuff, I'm sure all their math's a little off too. Like you might read something somewhere in one spot. I remember there was one year we coached at Arlington Catholic and we were 4-3. And in the paper, it said that we, qualified for the playoff. And then we found out that we didn't, the next day. So I'm sure that like figuring out new points and systematically, it could come down to a 10th of a point or 100th of a point. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a whole big math equation behind that, trying to
Next
figure out
Sunday is going to be an interesting day when
I'm
everything's
really
done.
curious. Yeah.
Next Sunday, I think there's going to be a lot of phone calls going on to figure out who you're playing, where you're playing, all that, getting film. So it's definitely, you're at an interesting point right now in Massachusetts high school football with the last week coming on us.
I know. We're really interested to see, especially some of the teams we've covered this year, to kind of see where they fall, in their divisions and everything else. Teams that are undefeated, yep, one thing, but like you're mentioning, who you play and so on and so forth, the 3-loss team might have a better ranking than say a 1-loss team, depending on who their opponents are. So that is really
never would have happened before.
No,
No,
definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd see some teams that get like a 2 or 3 ranking. You're like, what? Like, we're better than this team, like you used to feel that way. So, yeah, totally get that. It'd be interesting to watch next Sunday for sure. Practice style. Practice style has changed so much, obviously, over the last 5 years too, with concussion protocols and, heat exhaustion and what's been put out there and so on and so forth. How do you go about organizing a practice? Like if I walked into, say, like a Wednesday practice, like hump day of the week, preparing for your opponent, what am I seeing? I mean, are you guys scheduled we're running goal line situation, from this time frame, we're doing 7-on-7 at this time frame, we're doing red zone defense. Like, is that how you kind of segment your practices, or does that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an offensive day and a defensive day. So Tuesday is an offensive day, and defense gets about 25 minutes out of the practice. The whole rest of the practice is dedicated towards offense. So yeah, you'll get Paresghian on one end, you'll get the inside run, you'll get the indie session. And then Wednesday will be a defense day, and offense will get a short period at the end, so it works that way. But you're right about the whole concussion thing. We've totally gone to like the Dartmouth way of no live tackling in practice. So been through all those videos and teaching hawk tackling and everything. We've changed our philosophy, absolutely, and I think everybody had to. Forget about the MIA putting out. You're only allowed to tackle, for 20 minutes a day now, or something like that. Those are all gone. I would be very surprised if many teams are tackling for a long period of time during the week.
Yeah, I mean, I had Tom Bingham on from St. Bernard's High School, and he does not tackle either at practice. And that was the first I have ever heard that, truthfully. And his theory behind it was like, my numbers are low, and I can't afford kids to get hurt. We teach proper technique. We teach the whole wrap-up process. And our goal is that on Friday, these guys are ready to go, and these guys are ready to hit, and they want to hit because it's their first, contact of the week. And he's had great success doing it. So to say that you do that too, and obviously the success you've had, I mean, there's probably a lot more coaches out there that are doing that just people aren't aware of that are doing that. So I think that's smart from a lot of different perspectives for sure. Yeah. Dual county. I mean, you guys play in the dual county league. It's a very, very powerful league. I think, from year to year, who's on top might change, but the competitiveness of the league is always there. And to me, it's probably top 3 leagues in the state as far as football goes, as far as I'm concerned. So talk a little bit about playing in the dual county, some of the monsters that you see throughout the years, and, what it's like to get you ready for playoffs when you guys are playing teams outside of there a little bit.
Yeah, we are. Love the, obviously I'm a DCL guy, so I love the league. A lot of history in the league, a lot of great coaches and players obviously coming out of the league. But as far as the DCL goes, we're one of the smaller teams in the league as far as the numbers wise. So that puts us at a little disadvantage. But again, you look at Concord Kyle, we have some great rivalries with them, and Lincoln Sudbury, and we've kind of split into a large and small, so we only get a couple crossover games. One is always Lincoln Sudbury, just because it's right across the river. We call it the team across the river. And then we'll be like next week we have Westford Academy. So we'll see 2 large teams that will square off again. So the league has changed a little bit from when you talked about when I first became here, was you had to win the league, and it was 10 teams and only 1 team was going. Obviously things have changed over the last 21 years that I've been on the head coaching, but that was the tough part back in the beginning, where 1 team got to go. And we were lucky to go in 06 and 07 by winning the league. And again, beating Acton, Boxborough, and Lincoln Sudbury those 2 years to send us to the playoffs was truly one of the highest, points in my career. I mean, I love the Super Bowl win, but that 2006 year, we're playing Acton Boxborough, and we're undefeated, and they have 1 loss, and we come out at halftime, and the place is sold out. There was 5,000 people at the game, and we're coming out for warm-ups, and the place is already packed. And so that game, to me, like, just that's what the DCL was all about. And Acton's got a great band and a great fan base. So when kids are like, oh, the Super Bowl had to be your top game of the year, and I'm like, yeah, it was good, but I think I'd go with just the league game against Acton Boxborough when people ask me, what was my favorite game. It was in that 06 season, obviously, because it was magical, but I think it's because of the league and just being, the DCL and knowing that it's tough. And, again, we had to go face Central Catholic and stuff, but I don't know. I'm a league guy, and so I think that's it.
I get it. I mean, it totally, like the year that we won the Super Bowl in 08, beating Austin Prep that year was arguably bigger than the Super Bowl, and you look back at that game, and I probably have more memories of that game than I do the game that we won at Gillette in the Super Bowl, just because it was such a, like you said, a league win that, 2 teams that are really good, and you've battled them tough over the years. And, as a player, I'm sure you have your stories with those teams too. So yeah, beating them, absolutely, for sure. I think that's, I agree with that. And that's always fun for the league, for sure. One really amazing event that I know you were a part of this past Friday night when you guys played Lincoln Sudbury. And I'll let you obviously do a little bit more talking with it. I don't want to make mistakes on it. But in October, typically we celebrate, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's also Domestic Violence Month. And I know that you and the coach from Lincoln Sudbury had kind of teamed up for this event and really got both football teams and both fan bases really involved in this. And I want to be able to have you tell the story a little bit and be able to spread the awareness of what you did on the event and why you held the event. And I know it was on the news. It was on Channel 4 News. It was on NBC Boston News. So this was an event that was definitely covered, not just locally in your area or town or just the football teams. This was covered, by the state. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about an event that you guys put together.
Yeah, thanks. Really, really happy with the way Friday night went down as far as raising awareness around domestic violence. And, so Coach Gerard, who is the Lincoln Sudbury coach, he was on our staff. He was the defense coordinator in 06. So we are still best friends. He's still a guidance counselor at Wayland High School. And so we talk all the time. And we had a tragedy 10 years ago at Wayland High School where a football player killed his girlfriend after they broke up and after graduating from Wayland High School. And we have done so much as a health and wellness director. We have changed our curriculum and done so much more work around this great topic. But there's always more to do. And I think, it's not just about, coaching the X and O's and going out there Friday night, but what else can you do? As we talked about, great rivalry, Wayland, Lincoln, Sudbury, always a huge crowd. And so I got to give credit. Coach Gerard says we should do something, in honor of the 10 years and raise awareness and kind of maybe raise money for Lauren Dunn-Astley Memorial Fund, which was the girl that was murdered back 10 years ago. So we got together and we thought about, a couple of things that we could do, showing unity by both teams wearing purple socks, which is the color of domestic violence. We put on a training for our team. We had Reach Beyond Domestic Violence come in and do a training with my program, as well as we had a whole table of information and stuff at the game. And it was all set up by kids. So we had kids and we had some adults there too. But just to hand out purple bracelets and purple rally towels, just to get people to come to the table, to take a pamphlet or maybe think about, all right, am I in a healthy relationship? And that's what we talk about in high school is, are you in a healthy relationship? Do you know somebody that might not be in it? And our goal is like, if we could get one person in the game, in the stadium that night to think about their relationship, then we've done our job. Taking nothing away from cancer. But again, our motto was like, listen, you can't stop cancer from happening. You can put it in remission, you can raise money for the cure and all that stuff, but you can stop domestic violence. If you know that something's not right out there, you can step in and do something. And we call it being an upstander, which is very difficult for kids to do, but we're trying to teach our young men to do that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of men that are perceived as, the people that harm women. So we're trying to do better by that. And we just took that game to kind of raise awareness. And I think we did a good job.
Yeah, just talking to you on the phone about it and the passion, and obviously you being involved in Wayland for such a long time, I think that's, an amazing event that you can put on, something that's different. And even listening to and reading the articles about it, it's one every 3 houses that it happens. And, it happens behind closed doors. So you don't always, a lot of people don't know what's going on. And I thought it was great. Your captain spoke, and I thought they spoke very well. When I watched the interview on television, and, you guys seem to do a really great job into turning these young boys into young men. So I just wanted to, tip of the cap to you. I think that's a little bit different than what you see in the month of October, but something that deserves just as much as attention, because like you've said, it's something we can prevent, where breast cancer, unfortunately, we cannot. So, I appreciate that, Coach, being an educator myself and being in elementary education. It means a lot that, people at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school, are really working with these kids as they grow to cover these topics and have these conversations that can affect the rest of their lives for sure. And so I want to jump in because you've mentioned to it and we've talked a little bit about it, and you kind of answered one of the questions already, but we'll just talk about it a little bit more. Wrestling. I mean, on top of being the football coach for over 21 years, you also been involved in the wrestling program for just as long. And you had mentioned that one of your assistant coaches is the head wrestling coach. So I guess I'll ask you this in 2 parts. I mean, one is how much chatting you guys doing during the football season about wrestling? Like, do you guys take time in the locker room to be like, hey, after practice, you might stick it around for a half hour. I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And 2, how much of a rest are you taking from Thanksgiving when you have your, if you have your last game, if you're not in the Super Bowl, to relaxing before you're into wrestling mode right away?
3 days. It's not long. No, I think we're always talking about, wrestling behind the scenes here and there. I mean, it's on the floor. I'll get the schedule from them, and we'll talk about, hey, we heard this kid might be coming out for the team, and stuff like that. So it's always there. I mean, I love the Wayland wrestling. I mean, I love football, but I think the sport of wrestling is who's made me who I am today. I really, I owe wrestling a lot. So I will never turn my back on the sport. I love it. I played football for 1 year at Plymouth State, but I wrestled all 4 years at Plymouth State. So again, I love the sport of wrestling. It's different, but it's 3 days off and you're into it. Now, luckily, I'm not the head coach, so I don't have to do all the practice planning and stuff like that. I kind of get to show up and teach a move here and there and roll around with the kids and coach them up. So again, it takes some of the stress off. And again, there's so much, we just finished on Thanksgiving, but football's not over. We still have the banquet coming up and everything. Right. So I got to compare all that kind of stuff too. So it might take maybe 2 weeks for me to fully engulf and get into the wrestling flow. But I mean, I'm there the Monday after, ready to go. It's not like I'm getting a day off or something. So yeah, it is tough, but I love it. And I love what I do.
And you're dedicated to it. And I think that's the more impressive thing is that you're involved in the school system year round. And for those people listening out there, planning a banquet is one of the most difficult things, making sure that everything that you ordered is there. You're coordinating with parents, you're coordinating with the hall. You want the day to go off or the afternoon to go off without a hitch. You're preparing your notes of who you got to thank. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So when he says that, he means it, because I've gone through it personally, and it is. You don't want to mess anything up, and if you do, you feel horrible about it for days and days and days, on top of it. So, I totally get it. And as far as wrestling goes, and I'm sure with football being able, we talked about platform, but just your knowledge alone, I mean, cutting weight and nutrition and so on and so forth is a big deal in wrestling. I mean, how much does that cross over into the football world as far as your players and, just maybe their nutrition and keeping an eye on their nutrition? I mean, anybody who can do that, it's an added bonus in the world of football. I mean, wrestling, you have to do that every day. So do you feel like that kind of helps you out at both sports a little bit?
Absolutely. And you mentioned platform right there. We stick with platform all the way through wrestling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We make sure that we get 2 platform workouts every week during the wrestling season too. So those kids that aren't, that are doing wrestling, they are still getting the strength and speed training throughout the year. But yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, there's not as much cutting weight as there was, back in the days of, guy losing 15 pounds in 2 days to make weight. I mean, everything's a lot more controlled now. But yeah, it is a different sport, and you got to change your body type, and you're going for those. Football's a long, drawn out, where in wrestling you're going 6 minutes and it's over. So it is a different way to prepare and train and stuff like that. And we're lucky that we have the platform guys with us, as you talked about. They are not on the wrestling staff, but the head guy loves wrestling, and he actually comes in and runs the workouts twice a week for us. So I mean, again, just so he gets to see those kids again throughout the whole winter season. So going back to the other thing is how these other coaches stay impacting the kids' lives and seeing them. Like there's a prime example right there. He still gives up, a half an hour twice a week to come in and work out with the wrestling team and make them faster and stronger.
Has technology become like a prerequisite for the job for you at all over your last 21 years or no?
Technology, it's helped.
Yeah.
I think we're all between huddle and platform and then really just social media and stuff like that. I can't say I'm the best at social media, but those coaches on my staff are, and that's kind of like, all right, you're the social media guy, you're the content guy, get to pump that stuff out. I'll have ideas and I'll shoot them stuff like, what do you think of this? Like, great idea. But they also have their own ideas too. So we kind of got everything kind of split up. Every coach kind of has something that they do. And again, that's important to run a program. Not one person can do it all. If you're going to do it right, you need everybody's help, everybody's ideas, everybody's passion, and vision. So.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it kind of goes back to what we mentioned earlier, like letting your coaches coach, like letting your coaches who have strengths in certain things, let them do it is really important. I think that's something as a head coach, when I look back at, I probably should have did a little bit more, was a little bit more of, okay, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you do this? Instead of taking it on, because there's so much as a head coach. Like when you're a coordinator, it's a different ball game. Like you're just focused on coaching or whatever. But as a head coach, you're focused on obviously the X's and O's, but you're dealing with the school, the parents, the kids' academics, alumni,
Fundraising.
boosters, fundraise. Like it's nonstop.
Right.
I
And
get it.
emails have been a huge addition to,
Changed everything. It's changed
yeah, it did.
everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get that, and I think it's smart. I think it's not a way for a coach to burn themselves out either, just doing everything, not or else your day would never stop. It really wouldn't. So obviously you dedicate a lot of time to football and obviously wrestling as well, and you're a guy who dedicates whatever it is that you do. How much time do you take off after wrestling's over that you're just worrying about you and your job a little bit and your family and your friends before you're really sinking your teeth back into, okay, football season's 4 or 5 months away?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I got suckered into running our ultimate frisbee program. So that's in the spring too. It's a club, so it's not as intense as a varsity wrestling match or football game. But again, it takes a little time, and I think in the spring, I run the weight room after school every day, so I'm there. I really make sure that the summer, as soon as school gets out, I'm a big water sports guy. I love water sports all the time. I have a boat, and so come as soon as the weather is halfway nice. I'm lucky that my family has a cabin up in New Hampshire on a lake and stuff. So um, I'll run the weight room all summer long. Except I try to get Fridays and Mondays off, and let the other coaches take over those, so I can get some long weekends up there. And when I get up there, that's when I don't think about football or work or anything like that. So I think that's my kind of safe haven. That's where I just get up and get lost in the woods, go out for a run, rethink everything about the day. But that's what I look forward to, is just getting up on the water, do some wake surfing, wakeboarding, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't realize, especially football season, especially having little ones now, like Halloween in my house is becoming huge. My younger brother was born on Halloween, so it's always kind of been a big event in our house. But now being a dad, and so you miss some of that stuff, you miss some of that stuff. And then in wrestling, obviously there's Christmas and, and New Year and everything else, and you're super, super busy. So I think, sometimes people don't realize the work that really goes into it, that, yeah, when it's over, you need that break, whatever your sanity is or whatever helps you relax, you need it, so it's great that you kind of have that, little spot to go to and just do your thing, and that's the way you relax. It's awesome.
It's tough to balance everything, as you know. I was lucky, as I said, both boys played football and wrestled for me, so that was great to just kind of keep the family intact together, and doing that kind of thing.
That is awesome, having your kids play for you in multiple sports. I think that's, that'd be really
It
cool
was
to
a
coach
dream
my
come
son.
true.
Yeah, I would love to coach my son someday at the high school level for sure. It'd be unbelievable. So the last question that I ask you, and I ask a lot of coaches this truthfully, is, you've been doing it for a long time and you've been doing it right and you've been doing it successfully. What's your advice to young coaches out there that are just getting their foot in the door in their whatever sport it is? Doesn't necessarily have to be football or wrestling, but what would be your advice to them as far as, pursuing it, your time as an assistant, things that you think they should be doing a little bit more of, or just paying a little bit more attention to, that could really help them and be beneficial to them?
Ooh, great question. One thing that I do, and is that every Saturday, kind of after we've met as a team and coaches and everything, and you don't see everybody till Monday, is that I try to again take some time to myself and reflect on the week. I usually do it in a walk or a jog as I'm getting older in the woods again, and just get out away from people and just kind of rethink. What happened this week? What can I do better? I think you always have to question yourself. You're going to make mistakes. You got to own up to them. Really a book that's changed my life is Above the Line, Lessons in Leadership from a championship season with Urban Meyer at Ohio State. So about 5-6 years ago, I read that book, and it was like, wow, okay. I learned about E plus R equals O from Brian and Tim Kite, the Focus 3 Foundation, which is, the event plus how you respond equals the outcome. So I share that my team, we talk about that all the time now, the E plus R equals O. So again, you're going to make mistakes. We all do, and do not try to bury them, but embrace them and learn from them. I think that's the biggest thing. And I've made them over the last 21 years as a head coach, but we still do. It's not very rare somebody perfect in this job, especially working with young teens. It's always challenging. So embrace it and make sure you love what you do. I mean, again, we're not getting rich being teachers and coaches, but it's not about that. I wake up and I love what I'm doing. And when I talk to my buddies, it's not always the same thing. Yeah, they might be making more money than me, but they hate going to work every day. And I don't say that. So.
Yeah, and that's so important because I mean, I feel like we're very similar in that way. I mean, I have friends who make good money, they have great, biotech jobs or whatever, but they're working nonstop and they're stressed out all the time. And teaching and education can most certainly be stressful too, but there's something about every single day going back at it and doing it and being an influence and helping kids grow. Yeah, it's priceless. You love what you do, and and the schedule is nice that you're able to have the ability to coach football, wrestling, being involved in after school activities. And again, you're getting to know more kids and you get these kids to play different sports that you coach. Yeah, there's so much to it that when you love it all, it's a complete package. And money at that point, yeah, it's nice, but happiness and and being happy is, I argue, more important. So
Absolutely. I mean, before the pandemic, that summer, I had 3 players' weddings to go to. Yeah, that
awesome.
was just like, to be invited to that special moment, and and to hear, and obviously they got their buddies there, so you see so many people, but to be invited to things like that is just that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Knowing that you make an impact. I know that my coaches did that to me, and that was my whole goal. Is I hope I can do that to these people.
Yeah, I mean, like it's Serge Clivio. I mean, I coached under him for a really long time. I played for him. I mean, he did our, prayer, before we ate dinner, and at my wedding, and his son sang, as we were coming down the aisle. So, yeah, it's trust me when I say, like, you have an impact on these kids and they don't forget it. It's awesome. It really is. He's one of my closest people in my life, and he was my high school football coach. That's how it started. So, yeah, it is amazing the impact that you can have, and that's priceless. It really is. So, Coach, I want to thank you for coming on here. We have our last segment, which is called our 2-minute drill. So this is how it works. I'm just going to fire some rapid fire questions at you pertaining to the sport of football over your last 20 plus years of coaching. I do get a red flag. If I want you to answer something a little bit more, I can throw it, and vice versa. If you want to explain something, you most certainly can. So we're pretty lenient. It's a pretty fun segment.
All right.
Really love it. So I'm going to be looking off to my notes to the side here. So here we go. Toughest place in football to play an away game in the dual county?
Lincoln Sudbury, hands down. Their fans are crazy.
Okay, perfect. Song that still gets you a little bit juiced up before a game that you might listen to before a big game?
Thunderstruck, AC/DC.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. 4th and 3 from the 3-yard line to win the game. What are you running?
Play action.
Okay, I love it. Most coaches say pound the rock, so that's great. I love it. Toughest coach you've had to prepare against in your career?
My good friend Jim Gerard over at Lincoln Sudbury, and before that, he was at Hopkinton High School. We played against each other for 6 years while he was at Hopkinton, and now he's over to our rival Lincoln Sudbury. So, yeah, what he does, and we know each other so well. So, Coach Gerard.
So he was on your staff. I mean, how much has he evolved? I mean, has he evolved a lot as a coach since your staff? As far as
he definitely. He took some stuff. I mean, he's a defensive genius. So, I mean, we obviously stole stuff from him defensively wise, and I think he took some stuff offensive wise from us. So
yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. One position on defense that if you could be loaded at it every year, you would be
middle linebacker.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say the same thing. Some people say strong safety, and I get that. I guess what your system is, but yeah, middle. If you have a middle linebacker who can run and tackle, then you're tough defensively. Period. This year, 2021, 2022 Super Bowl champions in the NFL are who?
Oh, in the NFL.
In the NFL.
Oh, I'm going with Tampa and Bills.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. I love it. No, you can't bet against Brady until someone beats him over there,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
One word to describe your coaching style.
Oh, my style, I think, is I talk about care as an acronym: commitment, attitude, got to have a positive attitude, excitement, and respect for everybody.
Awesome. And what would your players say if they had to choose one word, or what you hope they would say?
Uh, he's exciting.
I love that. I haven't heard that
I
one yet.
still, come game time, I'm the biggest cheerleader on the sidelines. I'm running up
Yeah.
and down the side. I'm slapping the heads, high fives, all that kind of stuff.
The kids completely juiced up when their head coach is doing that. Absolutely. I love it. All right, coach. Well, you survived the 2-minute drill. And, I want to, again, thank you for coming on here. We're really trying to highlight high school coaches out there and programs that are just doing it right. And for us, it's not always about the teams that are winning every single season and winning championships. It's about all the really good things that are going on in programs. And between your coaching resume in football and your coaching resume in wrestling and your coach of the year awards and how you believe in running a program, you're like the perfect guest to have on here for all coaches to hear. So I really appreciate you coming on here and really educating all of us today.
Oh, I appreciate it too. This has been fun.
Yeah, awesome. So from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis. Till next time.